tío, chaval. Buah, qué locura, tío. Buah, 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 buah. Buah.
A series of powerful storms swept across Europe this week from the Atlantic to Balkans, caused widespread flooding, landslides and power outage. Meteorologists call it most active cyclone of this season, which formed over the cold water of the North Atlantic and entered Europe and squalls and recorded rainfall. In Portugal and Spain, entire town were flooded after 2 months worth of rainfall in 24 hours. We are used to heavy rain but not streets disappearing in a matter of minutes, say a local resident of Porto. France, one of the first countries to be affected. In Brittany, wind reached 120 km on hour and storm waves broke through the productive dams. In Normandy, rescue responded to more than 400 calls overnight. A minister of the interior described the situation as dynamic and dangerous, warning the risk in new landslides. In the UK and Thames, severe rivers burst their banks, flooded dozens of homes. Residents report knee-deep inside the homes and wind that sounded like a jet in tire. Forecaster emphasized the warmer atmosphere holds most maize true, making such events more intense. In Brittany and Rhine-Westphalia and Bavaria, where was affected in the higher winds, paralyzing transport and some areas declared a state of emergency. This is not longer to random phenomenon but patterns, say climate experts in Munich. Southern Europe has also been affected. In Italy, the historic center of Tuscany and Liguria were flooded, with the water pouring in the museum and underground places. Local authority warned the consequences will last weeks. Across Europe, thousands of people have been evacuated. Hundreds of schools have been closed, and the damage is estimated of hundreds of millions of euros. Rescue workers are working around the clock, but new waves of precipitation are still hit. This storm is yet another reminder to continent vulnerability to extreme weather, which is becoming increasingly intense against the backdrop of climate change. In many cities, schools, museums and theaters were closed. Public transportation and roads were flooded and people were forced to leave their homes. Hundreds of kilometers in the north in Lombardy region, particularly around the city of Milan, a new wave storm accompanied by heavy rain, flood and landslides. River burst their banks, water level rose and school residents and children were forced to evacuate. Emergency service responds more than 415 calls in a single day. Firefighters, rescue service and local authority were mobilized, asking residents to avoid water underground passages in dangerous area. According to the one reactor who analyzed the flooding in Tuscany, images in large spiral and unstoppable air that constantly drove maestro from the ocean to Mediterranean Sea. This configuration created extremely favorable conditions to midnight downpour that fell evenly lasted several hours within the interruption. The consequences will not limit it to flooded streets and overturned cars. Houses and basements were flooded. cars were lost, schools and businesses were damaged, and people were left their homes and forced to evacuate temporarily. Large-scale cleanup efforts and begin in the region. Volunteers and civil protection services are helping to clean up homes, restore infrastructure, and provide support to those affected. These events are stark reminder that even Italy's historic cities, with their architecture to culture heritage, are not immune to modern dangers of climate change. France was among the first to be struck. In Brittany, wind gusts surprised 116 km/h, ripping apart roofs and overturned vehicles. Thousands lost power, a high-voltage line collapsed. I felt like a house was breathing, said local resident Marianne Duval. The windows were shaking so violently, I thought they would explode. In Germany, the storm defeated relentless rain. Some town in Baden-Württemberg recorded more than 120 mm in just 20 hours, triggering flash floods that overwhelmed drainage system. Firefighters rescued residents from the submerged vehicles and flooded basements. Rail services across the country were heavily impacted, with the debris blocking key routes. Further south, Italy faced the dangerous combined by the heavy rain and intense wind. In Liguria and Tuscany, rivers burst their banks, flooded streets within minutes. Storm make landfall overnight, hampering Portugal and Spain, with the towering waves and a rainfall total non-sleep in years. In coastal Galicia, when the gust exceeded 115 km/h, rapid apart, burying docks and flooding entire waterfront districts. The sea looked like it was boiling, said fisherman Luis Andrade. As the system moved east, France witnessed catastrophic impacts. Rivers surged beyond their banks, submerged roads, and cut dozens of communities. In Normandy, firefighters carried stranded residents from second-floor window, and flood waters reached waist-deep levels within minutes. This was not rain, this was a wall of water, said local residents Maria Dudis. Germany, however, was submerged the storm epicenter. A region already saturated by the weeks and unstable weather were hit by another barrage and intense downpour. Streets in Calgary and Düsseldorf turned into swelling torrents. Airports were delayed to cancel it as winds battered runway.
Я домой хочу.
我来个鱼吧呢！我操！
Several music festivals and outdoors events were cancelled, leaving thousands and visitors stranded in makeshift shelters. Switzerland too reported significant damage. In Zurich and Lorentz, public transport was suspended as a hail closed rail lines and flooded tram tunnels. Airways saw delays, where insurers prepared for the decided one of the most expensive summer storms in recent years. Hospitals across affected countries treated hundreds of injured from cuts of barriers and the most serious trauma caused by the fallen debris. Power outage hit tens of thousands of homes while schools and businesses closed in the hardest hit regions. Meteorologists explained that the storm was triggered by the collisions of humid Mediterranean air with the cold northern winds, producing intense supercells capable of generating giant hail. Scientists warn such events are becoming more frequent as Europe warned. We are seeing a climate shift, say climatologist Dr. Eva Schinder. Storms like these, once rare, are now growing through it. Despite the disruption, communities relevate. Volunteers cleared streets of ice, neighborhood shade-roof routes, and extended travels, and emergency crew worked tirelessly to restore power. As Europe begin counting the cost and a hailstorm severe as another stark reminder of nature growing volatility and the urgent need to resilience in the face of climate experts. Several European nations have been struck by a wave of violent hailstorm, leaving behind the scene of chaos, destruction, and disbelief. From northern Italy to southern Germany, Austria, and parts of France, residents awakened the road coated in ice, damaged vehicles, and crews destroyed it in the fields. Meteorologists said the storm were followed by the clash of moist Mediterranean air with a strong cold front from the northern Europe, creating a supercell condition. Hailstorms are some larger than golf ball, pounding the city center and rural area alike. In the Munich car were left with the shattered widespread, while the bloody Italy public transport was paralyzed. The hail-covered tram stack. Agriculture Associational report to severe losses. Vineyard in Tuscany and orange in Austria suffered significant damage, with the farmers describing the storm as the worst in the case. One farmer near Verona lamented, "In 10 minutes we lost what we had worked for all year." Emergency services were inundated with calls. Dozens of injuries were reported, mainly from the falling hail and the raw accident caused by sudden ice flakes. Firefighters in Austria rescued motorists stranded on a highway blackened in ice, while the France-Rhone Valley flooded added the crisis and a hail-blocked drains. Video shared widely online showed iconic city squares buried under a layer of ice, sparked disbelief among the viewers. Tourists counting the storm described as apocalyptic in the like winter in the middle of summer. Experts warn that Europe have seen a rise in extreme hail events in the recent year, while the climate change likely intensify with volatility. Scientists note that the winter air cold most may soon fall in stronger storm capable of production less destructive hail. Local authorities reported thousands of homes temporarily without electricity. The intensity of the rainfall overlapped the city drainage system, officials said. Farmers across southern Spain also suffered major losses. The high of the size of a golf ball damaged crops and greenhouse. This storm destroyed weeks of work, letting it a farmer near Seville. Experts warn that such extreme weather events are becoming more frequent due to climate change. Weather aide Hood Mama is tour with a full, more violent storm, explaining climatologist Dr. Gieva Ortega. As the storm moves eastward toward the Mediterranean, cleanup efforts are underway, but many Spaniards are shocking and remain. A violent storm wreaked havoc across large parts of the Europe, bringing torrential rain, strong winds, and widespread flooding that paralyzed both cities and rural communities. The storm, one of the strongest in recent years, that hit countries from Spain, France, and Germany and Poland, leaving millions of people affected. In the northern Italy, roads turned into rivers. In a matter of hours, the rescue service struggled to save motorists who were trapped. In Bavaria, Germany, entire areas were left without power and winds exceeding 113 km/h. Europe is facing yet another night of extreme weather as a powerful storm system tears across the continent, leaving a trail of destruction from Portugal to Poland. Meteorologists describe the system as highly dynamic, feeling an unusual warm Atlantic water-shaped temperature contrast over the continent. In Spain, coastal communities were battered, the wave towering over 10 meters, smashing waterfront, restaurants, and flooding seaside roads. Barcelona's port temporarily halted operation due to dangerous crosswind. "I've lived by the sea for 40 years," said fisherman Jordi Matias. "I never seen waves hit the promenade this hard." The storm intensified as it pushed north. France saw widespread outage, more than 300,000 homes plunged into darkness. Emergency crews traveling to assist rural villages blocked by the fallen trees. Heavy rain triggered Porto in the Pyrenees, forcing evacuation in several valleys. A massive storm system swept across Europe was unleashed in destructive winds, relentless rain, and catastrophic flooding that has now impacted at least 8 countries. Meteorologists say the storm intensified and usually quickly driving a rare combination of warm Atlantic water and a deep Arctic cold plunge. In Germany, communities along the Danube and Rhine faced their worst flooding in more than a decade. Entire streets disappeared underground. Fast-moving water as emergency crews rescue families trapped in the victims. The river rose nearly a meter in less than 3 hours, said hydrologist Petra Klavin. This is not a normal event. France reported widespread damage as a wind gust approached 115 km an hour, ripped apart coastal infrastructure. In Brittany, fishing boat broke free from the mourning, while inland regions safely flash flood in covered highways and swept away vehicles. Paris, France, the hit of European most iconic city through the interdisary as a violent overnight storm battered Paris and surrounding suburbs, leaving behind the trail of destruction rarely seen in modern times. The violent tempest driven by the deep Atlantic pressure system unleashed torrential rainfall, different thunder and hurricane-force winds, plunged parts of the capital in the darkness and the chaos. According to the Meteor of France, Paris endured record-breaking rainfall, more than 16 mm in just 4 hours, flooding entire districts including said German Dispel, Baseline and Atlantic water. The city again drainage networks strategically to cope, tuning cobblestone streets into fast-moving rivers. "It was terrifying," said Claire Depot, who lives near Gerard-Lion. Within minutes, water was knee-deep. Cars were flooding. The lighting was so bright it felt like it drying for a second. Authorities reported over 1,800 emergency calls, with firefighters rescuing dozens trapped in the basements and underground car park. A wave of intense hailstorm swept across Europe, leaving behind broken roofs, destroyed crops and devastation communities from Italy to Germany, France and Poland. Meteorologists describe the event as one of the strongest hailstorms in the recent year, causing the collisions of cold southern air and a fast-moving cold front that swept across the continent. In Italy, especially the areas around the Rome and Emilia-Romagna, the storm was accompanied by thunderstorm winds and hailstones the size of walnuts, which pelted cars and roofs and a thunderstorm roar. In a matter of seconds, it was winter, said local resident Luca De Santis. The streets turned white, we could hardly see anything. Several motorists were stranded off ice-blocked drainage systems, flooded tunnels and city roads. Further north in Bavaria, Germany, the storm caused chaos in communities near the Munich and Augsburg. Cars were damaged, routes were uprooted and public transport was halted. Local authorities received more than 1,200 emergency calls in a few hours. Uprooted trees and damaged power lines. It sounded like a fire train rushed through the city, saying Munich resident Johannes Keller, describing the terrifying moment when the storm hit. France faced severe coastal flooding, especially along the Atlantic coast. In a vortex, storm surge flooded streets with a strong wind, small window and overturned car. Local authorities declared a state of emergency and urged cities to stay indoors. We haven't seen conditions like this in decades, say Major Alice Laurent. In Catalonia region of Spain, flash floods washed away cars and caused landslides in the mountain area. Rail and air travel were disrupted and hundreds of flights across Europe cancelled. Meteorologists service confirmed that the storm area received more than 115 millimeters of rainfall in less of 24 hours. Experts warn of the weather in Europe is becoming increasingly unstable. Storm in this magnitude used to occur on every 20 years. In Germany, the state of Bavaria and North Rhine-Westphalia were hit hard. Rail services were suspended in several regions after fallen trees damaged overhead lines, with the schools remaining closed in precipitation. Dutch Brown warning passengers in significant delays in cancellation. Meteorologists attribute the extreme weather and deep Atlantic low-pressure system colding with the unstoppably warm continental air and volatile mix and intensified the storm power. Dr. Elena Richer from the European Climate Observatory stated, "We are witness more frequent and violent weather patterns to shift atmospheric circulated linking to climate change." The storm also caused coastal surge in Netherlands and Belgium. The authority reinforcing flood a barrier out along the vulnerable zone. In Amsterdam, channels overflowing, forcing evacuation in low-lying districts. Airports across Europe, including Frankfurt, Paris, Channels, and Madrid, Bercia, reported flight cancellation and diversions as thousands of traveling overnight. A powerful Atlantic storm has battered large part of Europe, triggering widespread flooding, travel chaos and emergency evacuation across several countries. Meteorologists describe the system as one of the most aggressive early-season storms in the last decade, fueled by unusually warm sea temperatures and rapid pressure drops. In Germany, rivers in Bavaria and Saxony overflowed within hours, inundated streets, cutting off village and forcing rescue teams to deploy boat. Local authorities reported over 300 emergency clouds in a single night. The water rose faster than anything we think since 2013, said firefighters Moscow later. France forced hurricane force gusts exceeding 114 km/h, dropping trees, damaged power lines and leaving more than 115,000 homes without electricity. In Normandy, schools remained closed after roofs were torn off and a coastal town were hit by dangerous storm surge.
kunzima sisofa namhlanje asithandazeni.
Capo meu.
A powerful storm that swept across Europe caused severe flooding, widespread power outage and transportation chaos, with the emergency service struggling to cope with one of the most destructive weather events of the year in the region. The system caused by warm Atlantic air colliding with a cold continental front initially hit Portugal and Spain, dumping nearly the month's worth of rain in 24 hours. The streets of Valencia and Porto turned into rivers, with the cars adrift in turbulent waters. It looked like a whole city was drowned, said resident Marta Silva. Moving north, the storm intensified over the France, while gusts of up 114 km/h uprooted trees and tore on roofs. The level of the Loire and Garonne rivers rose dangerously, forcing the evacuation of residents from low-lying village. More than 400,000 households were left without electricity. We haven't seen such a rapid rise in the river levels in more than 10 years, said hydrologist Pierre Lemar. This was an unexceptional weather event, said Franco Delit, spokesman of French National Meteorological Service, Météo France. The storm formed rapidly over the Atlantic and intensified it as it reached the Paris basin, a pattern we have seen more often due to rising sea surface temperatures. Paris Mayor Ana Hidalgo urged residents to remain caution, warning they feel the storm forecast in the coming days. We are facing the realities of the climate change, she said. Our city must strengthen the drainage system and emergency infrastructure. As the drone broke, Paris woke a scene of chaos, flooded metro assistant, trenches, debris streets, and smelled the wet stone rising from the historic ruins. Yet, when the damage many experienced relieved the scene of the remained below critical flood levels. Paris was seen centuries of the storm, said local historian Jean-Luc Bernard. But each time we are reminded no beauty and frugality walk hard in the city. A powerful storm swept across Europe, leaving a trail of destruction. Storm Spain to Germany. Across and the offshore, it is one of the most destructive weather events of the continent in the last decade. In France, coastal towns in Brittany and Normandy were hit by winds up to 115 km/h, which tore roofs, houses, and forced ferry service to be cancelled. In Paris, sudden flooding inundated roofs and led to closure to some section of the metro. It felt like the city was flooded in a matter of minutes, said passenger Julien Maroux when through waist-deep water. Southern Germany, including Bavaria, reported hailstones the size of a golf ball that smashed car windows and damaged crops. Authorities confirmed several injured, and insurance companies warned that damage in agriculture could run into tens of millions of euros. Spain and Italy also experienced chaos. The streets of Valencia turned into rivers after 100 millimeters of rainfall into 2 hours. In Sicily, passed strong gusts of winds and left thousands of people without electricity. The storm raged all night, recalled Sicilian resident Lucia Romano. We couldn't sleep, afraid that the roof might collapse. Saragossa, the capital of Spain, Aragon region, was hit by catastrophic flooding after continuous rainfall caused the Ebro River in these tributaries to burst their banks. According to the official sources, more than 118 millimeters of rainfall in 36 hours, a record for the last decade. Entire neighborhoods along the river were flooded, forcing hundreds of people to evacuate, and rescue teams used boats to reach residents who were trapped. Schools and businesses remained closed, and authorities converted the sports hall into temporary shelters for the families left homeless. At least 3 people were confirmed dead, and dozens of injured in the traffic incidents and building collapsing related for the floods. In the city center, cars floated along flooded boulevards, and underground parking left and the sideway station were filled in water in a matter of minutes. Rail service in Aragon was suspended, and a highway connecting Saragossa, Madrid, and Barcelona were closed after landslides buried sectors on the road. Local residents described the sense of apocalypse. In just half an hour, water poured into the streets like a river. We lost everything in the first floor, said Maria Lopez, whose family home in the Actor districts was flooded. Farmers across Aragon have also suffered devastation losers. Flooded wheat fields, vineyards, and livestock farms threatening malt and harvest and livelihood. The economic damage is already estimated of tens of millions of euros. Insurance companies are prepared for the wave of insurance claims. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has promised immediate aid and emergency support, stressing that the community will be left without help. The storm also suffered the European transport network. Rail service hit in Germany and France suffered severe disruption, while airport in Milan, Brussels, and Prague experienced significant delay. Trucks were banned from the driving in some area Italy due to dangerous crosswalks. Meteorologists warn that climate change may be felt to intensify of this storm. We are seeing more frequent and violent weather events across Europe, said Dr. Hans Keller, a climate scientist in Berlin. European leaders pledged to carry off rapid relief force. France deployed military engineers to clear blocked roads, while Germany announced emergency funds to support reconstruction efforts. EU officials stressed to need a continental cooperation to deal with the climate-related disaster. For millions of people across Europe, this storm was not just a night to extreme weather, but another stark reminder of the continent's growing vulnerability to the fury of nature. In Italy, the storm triggered landslides in Liguria and Tuscany, where saturated hillsides collapsed onto roads. Authorities urged residents to avoid rivers and water level reach what officials called critical and unpredictable heights. Meanwhile, the Netherlands activated its renowned flood defense battery and Tate combined heavy rainfall. Engineers said it's move as precautionary but necessary, noting that climate-driven sea levels rise is increasingly stressing the country's coastal defense. Airports across the continent reported cascading delays, while train service in Belgium, Poland, and Austria were suspended due to fallen trees and flooded tracks. Experts warn that storms of the magnitude may become more frequent. We are witness to footprints of climate change on Europe weather patterns, said Dr. Elena Varga from the European Climate Observatory. Authorities contributing urged residents to stay indoor and warn flooded roads and monitoring official alert and the system slowly moving eastward. Europe, a powerful storm system has swept across large parts of Europe, bringing torrential rain, hurricane-force winds and widespread disruption from Spain to Germany. Named Storm Isadora by meteorologists, the violent weather left a trail of chaos, flooding streets, uprooted trees and cutting power of hundreds of thousands of homes. In France, wind exceeded 113 km/h, battered the Atlantic coast, triggered roofs, rebuilding and forcing to temporarily close it to Eiffel Tower due to safety risks. In Paris, emergency service reported over 500 calls overnight as fallen trees blocked major roads and debris littered the city. It felt like the city is breathing in chaos, said local resident Luca Mori. The wind was howling like a violent train. Further south Spain, in Dolphin, a relentless downpour that triggered flash flooding in parts of Valencia and Barcelona. Submerged cars and flooded metro station. Emergency crew carried out multiple water rescuing in resources as rainfall reached record-breaking levels, over 120 mm in 24 hours, according to the Spanish Meteorological Agency.
下冰雹啦！
Crossing into Germany, the system unleashed a combination of heavy rain and drainage gale force wind. River in Bavaria in Saxony continued to rise, threatening to overflow tonight. Rail operation cancelled dozens of long-distance trails, calling the storm one of the most disruptive events in the season. We're walking around the clock to clear tracks, said rail official Eric Stein, but the debris is coming down fast that we can remove it. Central Europe experienced rapid deterioration. Austria and Czech Republic report roofs turned off, scalding, collapsing and traffic halted due to fallen branches. Sirens echoing through the Vienna, and emergency service responded to more than 1,200 calls within an hour. Further south, Italy is grappling with the severe flooding in Emilia-Romagna, already saturated from the previous storms. A new downpour overwhelmed riverbanks. Train service was suspended in several provinces, and dozens of flights were cancelled. He rerouted the Charles of Gaulle and Orly airport. In a Burdex vineyard already vacated the wet summer separated for the damage, raising fears and a poor harvest. We have lost entire section of our vineyard, explained windmaker Claire Roseau. This is a devastation blow to our livelihood. And in French, entire minister deployed 3,500 firefighters, and the regional governor urged residents to stay indoors. 2 deaths have been confirmed, including the driver who was gassed and crushed in the fallen trees. Meteorologists said the storm was caused by the warm Atlantic air cooled in with a cold Arctic system, resulting in a strong wind. Such events are becoming more frequent in the intense, warned climatologist Dr. Jean Morrell, linking the storm to changing climate conditions. President Emmanuel Macron experienced solidarity with the affected families, promising rapid assistance to fund the recovery. But for many residents, the night of destruction will not forget anytime soon. We had storm before, said local teacher Sophie Laurent from Naples, but never anything that shook the earth so much. Further east, Poland, Austria and Czech Republic are now bracing for the storm's second wave, with a forecaster predicting another 48 hours of rain. Rain service have been disrupted across the region. Airports are experiencing rolling cancellation and thousands remain without power. Climate specialists emphasize that 3 events are becoming more frequent. Europe is entering a new era, weather volatility, Dr. said Sophia Markin of European Climate Center. Every year, the threshold of we consider extreme shift a little further. Authorities continue to warn residents to stay away from flooded zones and follow evacuation order as the storm slowly advances across the continent. Madrid has been plunged into chaos after a powerful storm swept across the Spanish capital, bringing torrential rain, gale force winds and flash flooding that left entire neighborhoods underwater. In just few hours, more than a month was in rain, overwhelming drainage and transformed streets into fast-flowing rivers. Cars were swept away, metro stations flooded, and power lines collapsed, plunging parts of the city in darkness. It was terrified, said Lauza Fernandez, a shop assistant who was received from the standard car. The water rose so quickly, I thought I would make it out alive. Authorities confirmed several fatalities and dozens of injured. Hundreds of residents were evacuated from basements in low-lying homes and emergency service working around the clock, often wading chest deep through the floodwaters. Public transportation suffered severe disruption. Madrid metro network were particularly shut, while train and buses forced long delays. Borough's international airport suspended flight for several hours, stranded passengers amidst scenes of confusion. Tourists were also caught in the chaos, with landmarks like Puerto del Sol and Plaza Major submerged. Videos shared online showed hailstones bouncing across historic squares and water pouring down the steps of the Prada Museum. In surrounding region, farmland was badly hit. Vineyards and olive groves were inundated just weeks before harvest, threatening significant agricultural losers. Economists warned the storm financial toll could run into hundreds of millions euros. Meteorologists explained that the storm was triggered by a clash between humid Mediterranean air cold Atlantic front intensified by record summer heat. Experts warn that climate change is increasing to frequency such extreme weather events across Spain, already one of Europe's most climate vulnerable nations.